Good afternoon, and welcome to today's Earth and Space Sciences Heads and Chairs webinar. My name is Heather Holton with the American Geosciences Institute, and I will be moderating today's webinar. I would like to introduce some of the individuals who will be helping run today's session. Pranoti Asher is the Manager of Education and Public Outreach at the American Geophysical Union, and she will be helping today's webinar. Our panelist today is Carolyn Wilson from the American Geosciences Institute. Carolyn is the data analyst in the workforce program, and she will be presenting results on AGI's National Geoscience Student Exit Survey. And also joining us today is Bethany Adamek from AGU's Education Department.
Good afternoon. Welcome from the American Geophysical Union. I wanted to let you know that this is a joint effort between the American Geosciences Institute and AGU to help support geoscience departments throughout the country. We think this is a great opportunity for us to combine our resources to strengthen that support for departments and department chairs. We look forward to your participation today and also throughout the rest of what is left of the fall semester. Take a look at our schedule. We have 2 more webinars lined up for the fall semester. The next one is on Thursday, November 15th, and the last one for the fall semester is after AGU's fall meeting on December 19th. As you can see from the list of attendees, there is a sort of broad representation of the types of universities and programs that are being represented today. So we're very pleased that you were able to join us, and we hope that you can join us for the next 2 webinars. I'm very thrilled to introduce to you Carolyn Wilson, who has agreed to share her work with us today. And so without further ado, here's Carolyn.
Thank you, Heather and Pranoti, and thank you all for joining us today. I'm going to be talking about AGI's National Geoscience Student Exit Survey, the results that we just collected in spring 2012. This is something that we have piloted twice now and are looking to move forward for full deployment this spring 2013, which I'll get to further in the discussion. And so I just want to let you know that I want this to be a discussion. I'll have some data and some information to present, but there will be these stopping points. And so if you have any questions or comments, please feel free to write them in the chat box, because I would like to hear your thoughts as I go through this presentation. So this project has been in the works for a few years. It stemmed from a couple of previous projects, the AGU survey of doctorates that happened in 2006, and some workshops at CERC, the Student Education Research Center, in 2009. And they started developing the ideas, the purpose, the objectives, and the actual survey tool. And so the tool, as it stands, hits up all of these objectives to really look at the relative experiences in school and the immediate career paths that students have as they graduate with their degrees. So the first pilot happened in May 2011. The departments that participated were handpicked, and we selected department representatives to help administer the survey to their students. We had 32 departments that were invited to participate, and we ended up with 14 departments that actually did participate. We received 103 responses, 11 of which were partial responses, and 92 were completed responses. 67 responses were from undergraduates, 23 responses from master's students, and 2 responses from doctoral students. The map shows the distribution of the participating departments across the country. We received some very good positive reactions from the first pilot, but we really wanted to build upon the feedback and experiences from this first pilot and do a second pilot. We also wanted to do a second pilot because I was not here at AGI for the first pilot, and so it was good for me to go ahead and pilot it a second time and really make it my own project. So the focus was to expand the participation and the scope of the survey and see if we can just get more people involved for this next go-round. The departments that were selected either participated the year before, had heard about the exit survey at the GSA fall meeting or the AGU fall meeting, or they were handpicked by us during the spring. So we sent out 81 invitations and had 58 departments agree to participate. We offered department incentives this time to really get increased participation, and these incentives included the aggregated data for the entire survey for everyone, as well as the aggregated data for their department, as long as they had enough responses. And the big incentive was we allowed them to provide up to 5 questions to give to just their students, so 5 department level questions, so that they could look at, assess anything in particular about their department program. And we used a new online tool. It's called Lime Survey, and it gives a lot of flexibility and saves time in developing the survey tool. That was emailed out in late April. And so out of the 58 that agreed to participate, 46 departments actually did have responses come back. The map shows distribution of the departments as well as the number of students from each state that participated. So I received 294 full responses. 233 of those were from undergraduates, 40 were from master's students, and 21 was from doctoral students. So we nearly tripled our response rate, which is excellent. The majority were undergraduates, but 14% were master's and 7% were PhD students. The demographics of our participating students. For the undergraduates, we had about a 50-50 split on gender, and the graduates, we had about 20% more males than females that took the survey. The majority of our students were U.S. citizens, and they were also, the majority of them were Caucasian. Now, if you notice, the purple sliver for race and ethnicity is all other underrepresented minorities that are not Asian or Latino. The percentages were so small that I had to aggregate them into one category. So that includes African Americans, Native Americans or Native Alaskans, Hawaiian or Pacific Islanders, or mixed races. We asked some questions about their educational background, and we found that 50% of undergraduates and a little over 50% of graduates had taken an earth science class in high school. And about half of that, a little less than half, participated in an earth science extracurricular activity while in high school. For the students that attended community college, we had over 80% of our undergraduates that took at least one class in community college. But as you can see, they weren't going for geo contents. They were going for a different class. And about 25% of our graduate students had taken a class in community college. But again, they weren't necessarily taking a geoscience course. They were taking something else. We asked them about their quantitative skills levels, and we found that nearly everybody had taken Calculus 1 sometime while in school. And a large majority of our graduate students, and undergraduate students took Calculus 2, but the undergraduate students in higher levels of math dropped off pretty dramatically after Calculus 2. The graduate students wasn't quite so dramatic. So the data that was provided for this first section of their demographics and educational background was pretty interesting. There's a few edits that I was thinking of making to this survey. The first, dealing with the race and ethnicity question, there were a lot of no answers, and there was a few questions that arose in my mind as I was doing it. And one thing that I think I should do for the next time around is conditionalize the citizenship question. So if they say they're a U.S. citizen, then they would receive the question about their race or ethnicity. I think there was some confusion with some of the students that were not U.S. citizens when they got to that question. If they say they're not U.S. or permanent residents, if they consider themselves a temporary resident, then we would just ask them what country they're from. I think the community college questions might need to be fixed as well. I mean, it's nice to know how many students took a class from community college, but I think we would really be interested in knowing who spent at least a semester at a community college or a year at a community college, like a more extended time than maybe just a summer class. And And there was a misunderstanding with the quantitative skills question. So I asked them about other math skills like pre-algebra, algebra, geometry, trigonometry, and I think there was some confusion on if they should select everything that they've taken or just their most recent courses or just the courses they took in college. So I need to rethink how I put together the quantitative skills question. And I throw it out there, is there any thoughts or questions up to this point in the presentation?
If you have any questions or comments for Carolyn, all you need to do is go to your questions box on your webinar control panel and simply type in your text there. And once you press submit, I will be able to see what you've written. So if you would please do that now, this will help generate some discussion for her points as of up so far.
If there's no questions, we'll move on. And if questions occur to you, we can go back to them. So we started getting into their actual geoscience background while they were in school working on their degree, and I categorized their geoscience degree research focuses into atmospheric science, environmental or earth science, geography, solid earth geology, oceanography or marine science, geoscience education, and then other. And so just to give you a taste of how these categories are split up, in the solid earth geology sector, which had the highest percentage of students, most of them were geology students. We also had volcanology, geophysics, seismology, geological engineering, petroleum geology, geomorphology, and soil science in there. And then earth and environmental was mostly environmental science, hydrology, biogeochemistry, and earth science. We asked them about their sources for financial aid during their degree. And it turns out that 86% of our doctoral students, 90% of our master's students, and 78% of our undergraduates used some source or form of financial aid. And I thought I would point out the student loans in particular. It makes sense, that there would be a high percentage of undergrads to take out student loans, but the master's students was a little surprising on our end. We had 30% of our master's students and nearly 20% of our PhD students that took out a student loan while they were working on their degree. And we also had a high percentage that did teaching assistants and research assistantships. Now they could select more than once. There may have been a combination of multiple sources of financial aid. We also asked them about their decision points for majoring in the geosciences. And this slide and the next slide, you may have seen featured as one of our AGI's geoscience currents. You can go to our website and download our most recent currents and look more in depth at the next two slides. But the things I want to point out are the majority of our students, their most important reason for majoring in the geosciences was they were previously interested in the subject, or they became interested as a result of a geoscience intro course in college. And something else that I found interesting was 24% of PhD students decided to major in geosciences because of a particular career. And so that earlier slide goes pretty well with this slide that shows the point in which students decided to major in the geosciences. Because as we saw before with their motivations, many of our students decided to major in the geosciences either before beginning college or during the first few years of undergraduate. And that was mostly our undergraduates that answered those questions that way. Our master's students were kind of across the board, but with a high percentage before beginning college. The PhD students, it really showed they were either, their decision point was either before beginning college or after receiving their undergraduate degree. The next set of questions that we asked were about their field experiences while in their degree. And we found that 30% of the bachelor's of our undergraduates, 48% of our masters, and 38% of our PhD students took all 3 different types of field experiences: a field camp, a field course, and any other field experience. We defined a field camp as an academic program that lasted for 4 or more weeks in the summer that is primarily focused on field tools and methods. A field course was defined as a course with a field component primarily covering field methods and experimentation, and that utilizes at least half of the class time. And a field experience was anything else that had a field component as a part of it, like a field trip or something along those lines. And so the majority of our students took some sort of field experience, and if they took a field camp, they took both. If they took a field camp, a lot of them took something else, and many of them took all 3. We also saw that 46% of our undergraduates, 25% of our masters, and 33% of our doctoral students, if they didn't take a field experience, if they didn't take a field camp, they took both a field course and a field experience. So we had most all of our students had taken some sort of field experience during their degree. And we asked about their research experiences. And what I found interesting from this graph is it's kind of all over the board for the undergraduates and masters on their level of research experiences. And this includes research experiences with faculty and then personal research. But what was interesting is we see this dramatic jump in the amount of PhD students compared to our undergraduates and masters that had 6 or more research experiences during their degree. We also asked them along the same lines if they did personal research, the methods they used to do their research. And I think this one will be interesting to track in the future, because as I look at it, as I've looked at it, you see a high percentage of PhD students participating in lab-based research and computer-based research, but not quite as high as field-based research. And with master students, you see a higher percentage participating in computer-based research than in lab-based or field-based. So I'd be interested to see how those percentages may change over time, or if they will. Now, they were able to select more than one method because you may be using more than one method for your personal research. And then we asked them about their internship experiences. And this will be another one to track over time, because as you can see, 66% of our undergraduates, 53% of our masters, and 62% of our doctoral students said they did not have an internship experience while they were in school. But when I asked them about how important they thought that experience was for their educational and professional development, 95% of our undergraduates and 100% of all of our graduates thought that it was very important or somewhat important for their professional development and educational development. And as I think back on the survey tool and the questions I asked here, some points to consider. I'm thinking about ways of maybe clarifying the financial aid question, because I had a lot of people click other when I asked financial aid, but when they wrote in the text box what that other form of financial aid, it actually fits in with one of the categories I had put out there. So there might need to be some defining or clarification on that question to make sure that people understand. I've had some discussions with participating faculty members about the decision points questions. In particular, there was the option of I like the outdoors as the most important reason for going into the geosciences. And there were a few people that took up issue with that because it wasn't specific enough, or there were different aspects of the outdoors. Like, you might like the outdoors, but someone said, but the reason I went into geology was because I like to study the outdoors. So there might be some nuances that I'm missing by just saying I like the outdoors. Another suggestion was maybe allowing for people to rank their answers instead of just picking one, because there may be more than one really major reason for majoring in the geosciences. And I'm wondering if I should put a limit of 2 selections to asking about the methods they use for personal research, if there's 2 major methods they used. Because I think about my time in graduate school and the people around me, and there usually was maybe 2 major methods for doing personal research, and I would like to be able to tease out any trends, and I worry that if they can select everything, it'll be harder to tease those trends out. And a question that I asked that you haven't seen in this presentation, but that was asked, was if they participated in any geoscience organizations or groups while in school, and I'm going to have to clarify that one because nearly everyone said they did, but there's a difference between participating in a member society versus participating in the geoscience club at your department. So there needs to be some clarifications there. So I'm curious if there are any questions up to this point.
In fact, there are, and actually going back to your point for students' decision points, we were wondering when they were entering the major and they answered your question, were they actually allowed to choose more than one reason at the time?
They only were able to choose one reason at that at the time.
So then next time, do you think that there might be an option to be able to choose more than one reason or have like a fill in the blank, or how are you planning on addressing that?
Well, in order to make the answers across the board easy to categorize, I don't necessarily want to do a fill in the blank because I'm going to get a whole lot of different answers if I do a fill in the blank. And they could still be categorized, it's just going to be a whole lot harder.
That would involve a lot of coding.
It would involve a lot of coding. So I would still like to do categories, but I like the idea of ranking the categories that are provided. And I'm going to work with the software to see how feasible that can be.
Okay. Okay, great. So going back to when we had our discussion about what types of math courses they've taken already, have you thought about adding chemistry or physics courses or any other type of STEM courses to that list so we have an idea of what they've taken in the past?
Well, that's not a bad idea. I hadn't actually thought about that, although I did get a few answers from students that said chemistry or physics, and there is a lot of math and science and different types of knowledge that comes from those classes that could be useful. So it's definitely an option that I am writing down.
Okay. Okay, great. We have another question, and we were actually wondering, can you see if the type of research method that the students use, can that really be tied to a subdiscipline of geology?
Potentially. I mean, I asked what their research fields were, and I also had a fill-in-the-blank box for them to briefly describe their research. So when I have time to code it and go through some of those answers, because they're long paragraphs, I might be able to tease out some connections between the methods and the areas of study.
Okay, great.
All right, so the next set of questions that we asked the students were about their future plans in graduate school and in the workforce. So we found 84% of undergraduates are planning to pursue a master's degree, 13% are planning to pursue a PhD, and 2% are planning to pursue a master's in teaching. And 1% wasn't sure. They knew they wanted to go to graduate school, but wasn't sure what their degree would be in. And for graduates, 6% of our graduate students were going to pursue another graduate degree, either another master's degree, and 94% of our graduate students were going to pursue a PhD. And the box shows the percentage of research focuses that they're interested in, and this is the percentages are based off of the students that said they are planning on going to graduate school. The other category in the box includes things like civil engineering, education, human resources, urban planning, public health, and social sciences. We asked them about their future plans for entering the geoscience workforce. And so we gave them the option of if they were seeking a position in the geoscience workforce or if they had already accepted a position in the geoscience workforce. So out of these students, we found 33% of our doctoral students, 40% of our master's students, and 48% of our undergraduate students are seeking employment in the geosciences. And the graph shows the different business sectors where these students are seeking employment. And across the board, it's all over the place with high percentages, but you can see that environmental, oil and gas, the federal and state and local governments and research institutes and consulting were all high sectors that students wanted to find a job. And then out of the students that have accepted a geoscience position, we found 48% of our doctoral students, 30% of our master's students, and 70% of our undergraduate students had actually accepted the position. And so they can only choose one business sector because there should be only one sector attached to the career they've chosen, and so it becomes a bit more clear where the jobs are being found. And that's in oil and gas for graduates and undergraduates, and four-year universities for our graduate students for the majority of them. This map shows the distribution of where the students have found jobs. And something to point out, you may or may not remember, but there is a high number of student participants in Pennsylvania and Texas. But if you look at this map, the high percentage of students in Pennsylvania are not finding jobs in Pennsylvania. They're finding jobs other places, or they're going back to graduate school. Whereas the students in Texas are a bit more likely to find a job in Texas. We asked them about the sources where they found their jobs. And as you can see, our students are finding jobs through their own network or through faculty referrals. We also had over 20% of our graduate students find their job through networking. And we also asked if they were seeking employment outside of the geosciences. So we found that 5% of our master's students and 15% of our undergraduate students are actively seeking a job outside the geosciences, and 5% of our graduate students and 6% of our undergraduate students have actually accepted a job outside of the geosciences. Now the percentages, the numbers were so small that this graph, instead of doing percentages, is just number of students where they are seeking jobs outside of the geosciences. But still, it's across the board, the different sectors where people are looking for jobs. And we wanted to ask them why they were looking for jobs outside the geosciences. And these are some of the answers that I picked out for, because they all kind of represent a slightly different reason for searching for a job outside the geosciences. So we have to serve my country, have not found a geoscience position, which I think is a common sentiment among students, is having trouble finding the job that fits their skills. Historic preservation is interdisciplinary, and I want to use my geology background in order to be a materials conservator. This one's kind of interesting to me, and I think it's something that needs to be discussed amongst myself and amongst and people like you. Is what is our definition of a geoscience? What is our definition of the geoscience workforce? I personally think, and many of my coworkers think, that if you're using your geology knowledge and your geology background for your career, then we include you in the geoscience workforce. So maybe there needs to be a redefining for our students. I want to explore other options for a career path before I continue my education in geosciences. I've decided that I would like to be a teacher. Now, this one goes again with the historic preservation quote. I mean, if you're a teacher and you're teaching geosciences or science to your students, you're part of the geoscience workforce, and we want people to understand that. And then finally, I found a career path that was better suited for my skills and interests in the geosciences. So from these questions, some thoughts I had about how to edit the survey tool I'm wondering if there should be a limit to the number of selections for business sectors that a student can select when they're seeking out a job inside geoscience or outside geosciences, putting a limit of 2 or 3. So although it does show interests are all over the place, limiting it might really identify the area students would prefer to have a job. I've already had a question about the sources where geoscience jobs are found, and there was some question about how we were defining the categories. So I want to make sure those definitions are clear as we move forward. And again, as I discussed earlier, the concern over the misunderstanding of the definition of what a geoscience job or a geoscience workforce is. So we might need some stronger language or explanation at the very beginning of the survey, so it's clear what we're going to be asking of our participants. We'll move on because discussion will open up in just a moment. So the next steps for the survey, we'll be opening this up again in spring 2013, and we're looking for a nationwide deployment of the survey. And so the steps to prepare for this, I'm advertising the existence of the exit survey. I'm giving these webinars. I'm also giving a talk at GSA, and we'll have a poster presentation at AGU. And I would love to talk to you all further individually about getting your departments involved if you think this is something that you can participate in. I've been talking with some of the participating departments on ways to improve the survey, and they told me that they were having trouble getting their students to participate, and most of them used email. So they emailed their students the survey link and asked them to participate, but they would like AGI, if possible, to prepare materials, flyers, etc., that really are focused for the students so that they understand the importance of taking the survey. Some departments actually gave it out in class. I know one department handed out pizza for participants while they were taking the survey, and they got really good. They got really good response rates when it was taken in the class. We're connecting with more departments to participate. I'm having conversations. I'll have some more conversations as the fall continues on. And one thing that's not on here, but we're going to add, hopefully, student incentives to the survey to get the students to take it and hopefully encourage them more to take it. And finally, something that will also start next year, we're developing a longitudinal study to look at how these careers and how these students move in their careers over time. And so this survey is helping inform the longitudinal survey. And one of the questions at the end of the exit survey is, can we contact you in the future about your careers and how you've moved on beyond school? So with that, I would really like to open this up for discussion and see what other comments you have. I threw out some discussion questions up there that you may or may not have answers to. These were also discussion questions that I gave to the participating departments to answer as well.
Well, the first question is, first of all, we have some participants here who are planning on going to GSA, and they were wondering what is the date and time of your talk, so that way they can attend the session.
I will be talking Tuesday morning, and that Tuesday, it's November 6th, I believe?
Yes, I believe that is November 6th.
But it's the Tuesday morning of GSA. My talk is at 9 a.m.
Okay.
Tuesday morning.
Great, great. And so kind of going back to the idea of the students who are looking for jobs outside of the geosciences, do you have any idea of specifically where they were going? Were those data collected, or?
I asked for, it was voluntary, but I asked them to give me their industry, the actual location of their job. We asked for salary information, location, information like that. It's just not presented in this short summary of what the data looks like. So that I do have that information.
Okay. Okay, great. We were also wondering, what are some of the student incentives that you talked about? Could a student incentive be like a free membership to a society, for example, or what were you thinking?
Actually, we were thinking something very similar to that. Some of our our best idea for a big ticket student incentive is to pay their registration to one of the fall meetings of their choice from one of our member societies. So we would pay their registration for the AGU fall meeting, and then provides them the opportunity to go for free and be able to network and talk with people in their field, and hopefully a career would come out of it.
So we had another question. In the case of small departments, what would be an added incentive other than having only the data for them? Because say if they only have, say, 1 or 2 students who participate, they won't really be able to have access to that data. So what would be the incentive for those smaller departments to participate?
Well, nearly every single department that has agreed to participate, their one major motivation for participating is having even the aggregated full data, having that data and information so that they can go back to the college and really show this assessment tool as reasoning for the relevance of their department and how they're preparing students in school.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we just had a comment saying departments could really use these data as part of their program assessment.
Absolutely. And
so,
some are actually some are using it as program assessment.
Okay. Yeah, great. So do you have any advice or suggestions for retaining our graduates in the geosciences and how we can really effectively transition them into geoscience type positions? Do you have any ideas on that? Because, you know, we see that some of these students are going into other positions, you know, outside of the geosciences, using some of that information and you know where they were going. How can we retain them?
I think the question of retaining is more helping them understand the skill sets they are obtaining as they go through school and some of the experiences they have in school. I think there's a disconnect in that understanding that even if you get your degree in geology, you don't necessarily have to go work in the oil fields. There are other openings that will use that skill set that would still be a part of the geoscience workforce. And this goes along with redefining what the geoscience workforce is.
Like those definitions we were talking about? Yeah.
And so this is something that kind of adds to jump-starting that conversation with students and with the current workforce and really rallying around how we how we help our students develop these skill sets and help them understand how useful these skill sets can be.
Yeah, definitely. So then if you were considering to including that type of definition of what a geoscience career would be, how do you think that would impact your results on the survey?
It might have a large impact. And so something I want to cover in the longitudinal study is now that you're out in the workforce, what skills that you didn't realize you had obtained have become really useful in your career, so we can bring that back into the exit survey, maybe just some edits to the exit survey. But I think it could have a major impact. Like I had to go through my data set and really look at some of the answers that were given back to me. Like I said, I had a lot of students that were interested in education or there was somebody interested in architecture and lead certified architecture, and it just didn't occur to them.
Themselves as geoscientists.
Yeah.
See, that's very, very interesting. So maybe they would rethink of what their definition would be in their own minds as who is a geoscientist.
And I have to say that's something that we are really focused on in the AGI workforce program right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a lot of programs going on dealing specifically with that topic. We had one question: will this presentation be made available for later use so professors and faculty can share this with their colleagues, with their administrators, etc.?
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a website that will be sent out when the webinar is posted, but we also post the slides from the presentation as well. So you'll have access to both this webinar and the slides.
Okay, great. Right now, are there any further questions for Carolyn about the Geoscience Exit Survey? If not,
I will throw out there before we move on. If you think this is something your department would like to participate in next spring, please email me. I'd love to talk to you one-on-one a little further about making sure that this will work for your department and getting participation.
Yeah, sounds good. We already have generated some interest here, it looks like, so
Yay.
that's a great sign. So if you do have any further questions for Carolyn or you think of any later, please feel free to email her at cwilson@agiweb.org and she will get back to you with your questions. So thank you again for attending our webinar, and we will go back to Pranoti for some closing remarks.
Thanks, Heather. That was muted. If you have any questions and comments about the webinar series in general, or you would like to join the AGU Heads and Chairs workshop at the AGU fall meeting, or you're interested in getting emails about the Heads and Chairs from the Heads and Chairs listserv, please contact me at pasher@agu.org. And of course, if you have questions about Carolyn's presentation, please feel free to write to her as well. If you are part of the AGU Heads and Chairs listserv, you'll get an email next month telling you how you can go back to today's webinar and download the slides or listen to it again or forward the link to your colleagues. So the last slide here is again a reminder of our next webinar series, and that is in November, and the words program assessment came up. So we are actually hosting a webinar on this topic. And we are expecting a couple of experts from the Building Strong Geoscience Department's leadership to do the presentation in November. And of course, the last webinar series of this fall semester will be sort of a recap of the AGU Fall Heads and Chairs workshop meeting. So I hope you can join us. Thank you for your time, and we look forward to your participation next month.